We all know aging is coming, yet almost no one is truly ready for it. I'm not just talking about the physical changes, like wrinkles or a slower pace. I'm talking about the subtle shifts in our relationships, our confidence, and how the world sees us. But there's something else, something no one ever warns you about, the small habits that quietly creep into our lives, habits that can slowly push people away and make aging far lonelier than it ever needs to be. Today, we're talking about 12 ugly things that can happen as we age. And I use the word ugly not because older people become bad, but because these habits create distance, pain, and isolation, often without anyone even noticing. Let's look at the story of Henry. At 72, this retired math teacher was loved by everyone. For most of his life, he was the friendly, patient, helpful guy, always ready with advice or a joke. But over time, things changed. His phone stopped ringing as often. Friends visited less. Conversations felt shorter, colder. Henry couldn't understand why. He told himself people were just busy, that life moves on. But deep down, he wondered if something inside him had changed. And he was right. It wasn't one big thing, but dozens of tiny habits that were building walls instead of bridges. The first was negativity. Henry didn't see himself as negative. He called it being realistic. But soon, every conversation was sprinkled with complaints: his aching knee, the bad news on TV, how young people didn't show respect anymore. Each comment seemed harmless on its own, but together they drained the joy from the room. People started pulling away. Even his grandkids didn't stay as long. Because negativity, no matter how justified, makes others feel heavy, and no one wants to leave a conversation feeling worse than when they started. When Henry started to consciously notice the small blessings, the smell of his morning coffee, the sunlight on the window, the sound of kids laughing outside, his heart began to soften. Gratitude didn't erase his problems, but it stopped them from controlling him. And slowly, people started to stay longer. They smiled more. His world warmed up again. The second habit was neglecting personal appearance. Henry used to be a sharp dress-a-fresh shirt, a clean shave. But after retirement, he stopped caring. If no one's visiting, why bother? He thought. Days would pass in the same old clothes. He didn't see the problem, but others did. Not because they were judging him, but because when someone stops caring for themselves, it sends a silent message. I no longer matter. When Henry started grooming again, shaving, wearing clean clothes, putting on his favorite watch, his confidence returned. The first time he smiled at his own reflection, he realized he had brought back a part of himself he'd lost. The third ugly habit was stubbornness. When his family moved their conversations to texting and video calls, Henry refused. If they want to talk, they can call me, he'd say, but they didn't call as often. Birthdays, jokes, and family news were all happening in a group chat he wasn't part of. Not because they didn't care, but because life had changed, and Henry hadn't. When he finally gave in and learned to use the chat, he was amazed at how connected it made him feel. Staying open to change doesn't erase who you are. It keeps you present in the world. Then came the fourth habit, hoarding and refusing to let go. Henry saved everything. Old magazines, broken gadgets, clothes from decades ago. Every item held a memory. But slowly, his home became crowded and exhausting. He stopped inviting people over because the thought of cleaning was just too overwhelming. His house had become a museum of the past, with no room left for the present. When he finally started letting go, one drawer at a time, he felt lighter. The space in his home created space in his mind. The fifth habit was losing patience. Henry used to be a calm man, but over time, irritation began to show, sighing in grocery lines, snapping at slow drivers. The world felt too fast, and he felt left behind. But one day he saw a young cashier's hands shake while he complained. In that moment, he realized something profound. Being older didn't give him a right to be unkind. Patience wasn't about speed, it was about compassion. As he started to deliberately choose patience, his days felt lighter. The sixth habit was talking too much and listening too little. With a lifetime of stories, Henry loved sharing his wisdom. But one day, his daughter gently said, "Dad, sometimes it feels like our conversations are only about you." It hurt, but it was true. He had stopped asking questions. He had stopped truly listening. When he began to practice active listening, conversations transformed. People opened up. They laughed more, and they stayed longer. These first six habits: negativity, neglecting appearance, stubbornness, hoarding, impatience, and not listening seem small, but together they can completely change how the world responds to you. Let's move on to the seventh, pushing people away instead of asking for help. Henry never wanted to be a burden, so he'd refuse help even when he desperately needed it. But independence without connection becomes isolation. When he finally swallowed his pride and accepted help from his neighbor to carry in his groceries, something surprising happened. He made a friend. Letting others help isn't weakness. It's a doorway to human connection. The eighth habit was being so frugal that life stopped being enjoyable. Henry had spent 40 years saving every penny, but even with a comfortable nest egg, he couldn't bring himself to spend it on joy. One night, his daughter took him to a jazz concert. Sitting under the soft lights, feeling the music vibrate through his chest, he realized how long it had been since he truly felt alive. Saving money is smart, but saving joy for a someday that never comes is a tragedy. The ninth habit was talking down to younger generations. It didn't come from a place of malice, just habit. A quick joke about kids today or how things were better in my time. But these comments, however small, close the door on connection. When Henry started asking his grandkids about their world with genuine curiosity instead of judgment, their faces lit up. Respect builds bridges, and it has to go both ways. The 10th habit, holding grudges. For years, Henry replayed old betrayals in his mind like his favorite movies. The people who hurt him had long since moved on, but he was still carrying the weight. When he finally chose to let it go, not for them, but for his own peace, he felt years younger. The 11th ugly habit was ignoring health problems. Like many seniors, he didn't want to complain, worry his family, or face potentially bad news. So he ignored the persistent ache, the shortness of breath. But ignoring symptoms nearly cost him his life. When he finally took his health seriously, making doctor's appointments, taking his medication, and joining a walking group, his energy came back. Taking care of your body isn't weakness, it is strength. And the 12th habit, perhaps the saddest of all, was forgetting to laugh. Life had become a routine, quiet, predictable, and serious. The day he watched a silly animal video and laughed until tears streamed down his face, he felt something inside him awaken. Joy isn't childish. Joy is medicine. So, to recap, the 12 habits are negativity, neglecting appearance, stubbornness, hoarding, impatience, talking too much, rejecting help, being overly frugal, talking down to youth, holding grudges, ignoring health, and forgetting to laugh. Henry didn't fix everything at once. He started small, changing one little thing at a time, and those small changes changed everything. His home felt brighter, his relationships deepened. His smiles became real again. Aging will always bring changes, but it doesn't have to bring loneliness, bitterness, or emotional distance. Awareness is the key. A small act of kindness, a moment of joy, a willingness to learn, a simple thank you. These are the things that keep the heart young, because aging itself isn't ugly. The habits we allow to take root are. If you recognize any of these in yourself or in someone you love, please remember this. It is never too late to soften, to grow, to laugh, and to truly live. The later years of life can be the most beautiful chapter of all, if we just keep our hearts open. Thank you so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider liking it and subscribing for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.